He was a man who used to buy destinies, until one day, he lost his own. A cold stone cell. Iron bars. A sentence that could no longer be bought with money. The millionaire was kneeling on the floor, crying for the first time in his life, when suddenly he heard a child's voice. "Don't cry, sir. My mom will save you." He didn't immediately realize the voice was speaking to him. At first, Artyom Voronov thought he had finally gone insane. That happened often in prison cells. People began talking to shadows, hearing footsteps where there was only silence, remembering the voices of those who had long erased them from their lives. He was kneeling by the bars, his forehead pressed against the cold stone, crying quietly, silently, like grown men cry when they have no one left to prove their strength to. "Don't cry, sir. My mom will save you." The words were so gentle that at first he mistook them for a thought. Then he heard breathing. Someone else's. Real. Alive. Artyom slowly lifted his head. Light from a narrow window fell unevenly, slicing the prison yard into strips of light and shadow. And in one of those strips, she stood. A little girl. So thin it was as if she had been carved out of air. She wore an old dress that must once have been light-colored, now faded and mended in several places. The sleeves were too short, as if she had grown faster than life could keep up with her. Her feet were bare, dirty with dust. Her hair was dark and tangled, as if she rarely saw a comb. But a ray of sunlight was caught in her hair, and because of it, it almost looked golden. She was looking straight at him. Not with pity, not with curiosity, and certainly not with fear. She looked at him the way children look before they learn to be afraid of other people's pain. Artyom straightened abruptly. Shame burned hotter than the tears. Instinctively, he adjusted the sleeves of his expensive suit. A foolish habit left over from his former life, when appearance was armor. That armor no longer protected him. "You shouldn't be here," he said hoarsely. "This is a prison. Go to your mother." The girl didn't move. She tilted her head slightly, as if listening not to his words, but to what was hidden behind them. "You were crying," she said. "I heard you. Everyone cries here," Artyom snapped, surprised by the anger in his own voice. "Go." He expected her to be scared. To step back. To run away, like adults did, just from the sharpness of his tone. But the girl took only a small step forward. Now there was less than a meter between them. "You were crying differently," she said. "Not like bad people cry." Artyom closed his eyes. The words hit exactly where they hurt. He wasn't evil. He was broken. "What do you know?" he asked wearily. "Go before the guards see you." "They know I'm here," the girl replied calmly. "My mom works here." That made him look at her more closely. For the first time in a long while, he truly saw a person, not just a silhouette. "Works here. She cleans the floors," the girl nodded. "Sometimes she cries in the storage room, thinking I don't see her, but I do." Something tightened painfully in Artyom's chest. He didn't want to know this. In prison, letting other people's lives inside you was dangerous. It made you weak, and weakness was sensed immediately here. "Then go to her," he said more softly. "I'm not someone you should talk to." The girl looked at him so seriously that he felt small again. As if it wasn't a child standing in front of him, but a judge. "My mom says that good people sometimes end up in bad places," she said. "And that you shouldn't believe walls. They lie." Artyom smiled crookedly. "Walls don't lie. People do. Walls just hold those who were unlucky." "Were you unlucky?" the girl asked. He wanted to answer. Automatically. "No, I'm guilty." Or yes, "I was framed." But the words got stuck. "I lost everything," he finally said. "That's worse than being unlucky." The girl stepped closer again. She placed her small palm against the cold metal bar. Not touching his hand, but very close. "If you had lost everything, you wouldn't be crying," she said confidently. "Only people who still have something hurting inside can cry." Those words weighed more than any sentence. Artyom took a sharp breath. Tears filled his eyes again. But these were different. Not tears of despair, but of some strange recognition. "What's your name?" he asked almost in a whisper. "Aliyah," she replied. "And yours?" He hesitated. No one used his name here anymore. To the guards, he was prisoner number 72. To the system, a case file. To the world, forgotten. "Artyom," he said at last. "Just Artyom." Aliyah nodded, as if memorizing something important. "Artyom," she repeated. "I'll tell my mom you're here." Why? He asked warily. Because you were crying, she shrugged. And my mom always says, if someone is crying, it means they need help. He wanted to argue. To say that no help would ever come for him. That all doors were closed. That justice was a beautiful fairy tale for people who had never been behind bars. But he stayed silent. My mom will save you, Aaliyah said. As if it were the most obvious fact in the world. Just wait. She smiled. Not wide. Not naively childish. But calm and confident. And in that smile was more hope than he had seen in months of prison. Then a strict guard's voice sounded behind her. Aaliyah turned around. I'm coming, she said, then looked back at Artyom. Don't cry anymore today. My mom doesn't like it when good people cry alone. She walked away. Artyom remained standing by the bars. His palm pressed against the cold metal. Where her hand had been just a moment before. The cell was still cold and empty. The sentence hadn't disappeared. The walls were still there. But something inside him had shifted. For the first time in a long time. He didn't feel completely alone. And for the first time in a long time. A thought crossed his mind. What if she's right? Mornings in prison always began the same way. A sharp metallic sound that tore sleep apart. Artyom was already awake. He hadn't slept. All night, Aaliyah's face stood before his eyes. Her calm gaze, her words. My mom will save you. He didn't believe in salvation. But the idea that someone could say those words without mockery warmed him more than any blanket. When the cell doors opened for a short walk, Artyom stepped into the yard and instinctively looked toward the place where Aaliyah had stood the day before. It was empty. He had already convinced himself it was a one-time meeting. A strange moment in a gray routine. And just then, he heard soft footsteps. She was coming, slowly, as if afraid to disturb the air. In her hands was a cloth bag pressed to her chest. The same dress, but clean. Still damp at the hem. She stopped when she saw him and smiled. As if they had only been apart for a minute. I came, Aaliyah said. Like I promised. You're not allowed to bring food here, Artyom said, noticing the bag. It's dangerous. It's not food, she replied, carefully opening it. Inside was a small piece of bread. Warm, still smelling of fresh crust. My mom baked it at night, she said. She said when someone is sad, they need something real. Artyom reached out hesitantly, as if expecting someone to stop him. No guards were nearby. He took the bread. The simple homemade smell made something inside him ache. Tell your mom thank you, he said, swallowing. I will, Aaliyah nodded. She worries. About me? He asked in surprise. About everyone, she said simply. She always worries. He broke off a small piece and ate it. The taste was simple, and that made it even stronger. He closed his eyes, allowing himself that moment of weakness. How does she work here? He asked when he could speak again. She's been here a long time, Aaliyah replied. Since the hospital closed. He froze. What hospital? Aaliyah frowned, remembering. The one in our district. It smelled like medicine and soap. Mom said it was a good smell. And then people in suits came and said there was no more money. The words struck slowly, but precisely. Documents flashed through Artyom's memory. Numbers. Signatures. He remembered that deal. To him, it had been just a line in a report. Optimization. Closing an unprofitable facility. He hadn't remembered the address. He hadn't remembered names. He had never seen the consequences. Your mom, was she a doctor? He asked, already knowing the answer. Aaliyah nodded. She treats people even when they don't pay. She says hands can't forget how to help. A chill ran down Artyom's spine. He looked at the girl and suddenly saw the entire chain clearly. His decision. Closed doors. A woman with a mop and a bucket. A child in a mended dress. Everything that had once been abstract now had faces. You were sick, weren't you? He asked quietly. Aaliyah paused, then shrugged. Very. I almost couldn't walk. The doctors said there wasn't much hope. But Mom said as long as I breathe, there's always hope. He clenched the bread so hard that crumbs fell to the ground. And she healed you. Yes, Aaliyah smiled. At night, when there was no medicine, she found other ways. She's smart. Artyom turned away. Breathing became difficult. He suddenly understood that he was here for a reason. Not as a victim of the system. Not as an innocent man. But as someone who had once chosen convenience over responsibility. Prison had simply drawn the line. Why do you come to me? He asked at last. There are many people here. Many who cry. Aaliyah looked straight at him. Because you looked at me like a person, she said. Not like dirt. Mom says that matters. He wanted to say he didn't deserve that. That he wasn't a hero. But Aaliyah was already untying her bag, pulling out a small, neatly folded handkerchief. Mom told me to give this to you, she said. So you can wipe your eyes. She doesn't like it when people hide their tears. Artyom took the handkerchief. It was old, washed until soft, with faint embroidery along the edge. He pressed it to his face and, for the first time in a long while, cried openly, without shame. You know, he said through tears. Your mom, she's stronger than anyone I've ever known. Aaliyah nodded, as if this were nothing new. She just doesn't give up. Footsteps approached from the far end of the yard. This time, the guard was closer. Aaliyah quickly folded the empty cloth back into her bag. It's time, she said. But I'll come again. Thank you, Artyom said. For the bread. For everything. She was about to leave when she suddenly stopped. You're not evil, she said, not asking. You were just comfortable not noticing. He flinched. The truth was bare and merciless. Yes, he said quietly. You're right. Aaliyah smiled, not triumphantly, but gently. Then you can change, she said. Mom says that's the hardest treatment. But it works. She left him standing alone in the yard. The bread was gone. The walk was over. The bars closed again. But inside Artyom, something had begun to rebuild. Like a bone after a fracture. Painful. Slow. But real. That night, he didn't sleep again. But this time, he didn't stare at the ceiling. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about proving he was right. But about whom he owed the truth to. And somewhere deep inside, for the first time, a thought appeared that had once seemed impossible. If I am ever free, I will owe this world more than it owes me.